Hello and good morning, everybody. My name is Adam Brooke. I'm Head of Marketing here, and I'd like to welcome you all to this ISM webinar. I know you'll get plenty of practical advice from today's session, which you can start applying to your own roles straight away. This webinar, once delivered, will be made available on demand as soon as we finish, so you can watch it as many times as you like and at your own convenience. During the webinar, you'll be able to ask questions by typing them to the box above. We'll answer any questions you may have at the end, and if we miss any, we'll get in touch with you after the webinar finishes. Please also take a moment of your time to look through the attachments. Some attachments are from the presenter, and some attachments are from us. Now, to introduce our presenter. Tim is a sales performance specialist consultant. He has a career in business development and management spanning 30 years. During which time he has been a top-performing sales director, established and run courses on sales and management within the many varied business sectors, and trained at a number of top management colleges. He is also an ISM Fellow. Tim is the next voice you'll hear. I hope you enjoy the webinar, and I'll see you guys at the end. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Adam. Really appreciate that. Just to check everybody can hear me. If you can't hear me, please indicate. And Adam, I'm sure that if you can hear me, everybody else can hear me from that point of view. Well, welcome to today's webinar, and today is focused on fees, as it were. Now, I know some of you who are listening to it may not be dealing with clients, you may be dealing with customers, and you may not be dealing with fees, you may be dealing with prices, you may be dealing with contracts, you may be talking about the total contract value, all sorts of different areas. So although I use the term clients and I use the term fees, the principles of this apply to all of us, whatever we're doing. And I've used those terms because I happen to use those terms in what I do as far as consultancy is concerned. So the stuff that you're going to hear today is largely research-based. I am a scientist by background, so a lot of the stuff I do around sales is look at some of the research behind stuff. So I'm not going to come here and tell you about my feelings on things and what my views are going to do. I've done the research in the fields and looked at what the best of the best, if you like, are, and what other people are doing in the environment, and what the research says around what we should be doing here. So if we think about fees as such, now, unfortunately, in the environment we work with, customers have got more knowledgeable. They do their research, and there's been a lot of research done on customers and research, and some of it from, most of you have probably seen the research from the Chief Executive Board, who published the Challenge Sell, and we've done the research here at the Rain Group, which is what I'm part of as well. And it says that customers, because of the internet, because of access, and on iPads, on computers, on phones, they've got a lot more knowledgeable about us as vendors, as suppliers, as partners, or whatever we want to call ourselves. Hopefully partners, actually, which is where we want to be. And the problem is then, they also do their research. Wherever they are, they can do their research, not necessarily on plane, as it's shown here, but they can do their research online and find out about us. And from our point of view, we all want good, profitable businesses. We want to make sure that we want to profit, and by and large, sometimes we find that we're put into a commodity, or we're trapped into a situation where we're having to give away money. And the fortunate thing about that, reducing fees or reducing our tariff or reducing our contract value or whatever it can, is a little bit of a slippery slope. And the expression sometimes used is, race to zero, because if we do it, then others are going to follow suit. And this is particularly noticeable if we're in RFP situations, requests for proposals, where we reduce the fees by 10, 20% or something does the following. And often, unfortunately, we're surprised by the request to lower fees. And what I don't mean is that we are in a situation where nobody's ever going to ask us to reduce fees, but we're caught on our back foot. So we're caught in a little bit of a corner because we've offered a certain fee or a certain tariff that we've given somebody, or a certain price on a contract, and they come back and say, yeah, it's too expensive for us, or whatever the objection may be, and we're caught on our back foot. And if we're surprised, we often don't think logically. So unless we're practiced, unless we've come across this many times, and I'm sure some of you have come across it a few times, we tend to react emotionally and also sometimes tend to give in too easily. That's some of the problems as well. And here we are. Do we reduce our fees as a matter of cost? Surely not. Well, we do. And, you know, if we ask anybody, I'm sure there are people on presentations today who stick rigidly to what they charge, and that's absolutely fine. But if you don't, here are a few tips to, you know, make sure that we're doing what we should do. So here's a benchmark report that was done by the Rank Group on 5 major professional service industries. And that's the reason primarily that I'm interested myself, because of the professional service industry, which hopefully I'm part of, giving people consultancy. They looked at just under 2,000 respondents, and what percentage of firms reported they discount on fees. And you might be a little bit surprised on this. Looking at some of these professional services firms, they found that 76% of law firms do. 66% of architect engineering firms, 65% of consulting firms like my own, and 61% of accountancy and financial service consulting firms, and 58% of marketing, advertising, PR firms. So, quite a few people discount fees, and they vary, don't they? They don't all mean that, you know, you give away the, you know, the crown jewels, as it were, when you discount. But we all discount. But here are some golden rules to think about. This is often the question. Your fees are too high, can you do it for less? And that sometimes keeps us on the back foot. So what is the answer to this? And there is a book that some of you may or may not come back called Getting to Yes, by a couple of gentlemen called Roger Fisher and William Ury. This is the gold standard negotiation. It comes back to negotiating with people. It comes back to the basis, if somebody is asking you to lower your fees, have they done their homework? Are they, as many of you probably realise, are they comparing apples with apples? So are they comparing your service with somebody else's service exactly in the same way, or are they comparing apples with pears? So it's a totally different model. That's the first thing to think about it. But this book gives you a sort of a fundamental framework around these here. And what it says is there are basically 2 elements to a deal. There's the substance of the deal and the substance of the relationship. So what we've got to bear in mind is if we play hardball in negotiation about fees, if we say, no, we're not absolutely not going to negotiate there, are we harming the relationship, or are we offering enough value in what we offer that it's justified in what we do? So arguing can be counterproductive. I mean, you may win the argument, but you might lose the relationship in the process, because people like buying from people, as we said in the previous seminar we did a couple of weeks ago. Rapport is absolutely essential to any process, and it's true within a fee negotiation process as well. But if we negotiate about fees, we have got to make sure that we maintain rapport, because there are some figures that say there's 42% better value in a negotiation if you can create a climate of cooperation around this. So not argue, not be positional about things, but give a reason behind. And in any deal, power is defined as the value of a client divided by A, where A is the number of alternative clients or actions you can take. So if a client comes to you, what I mean by this, if a client comes to you and say, look, you know, can you negotiate your fees? I'll just say, if that's a very important client to you, the value client is high, and there are not many other clients that you have of that particular ilk, in other words, very important clients to you, then the number of alternatives is low. So therefore, you have less power. So it's also a counter way as well. You have more power if you're offering greater value to a client, and also the number of alternative actions or people they can go to. And it stands to reason, doesn't it? If there are many out there who are offering the same kind of thing that you are doing, and for similar sort of prices, then you have less sort of power and the value you're offering around that. And many of you have seen a book that's come out fairly recently, a few years ago, called The Challenger Sale. And our book, the Rain Group, called Insight Selling, says exactly the same thing. Is that often what we do, we're put in a position to talk about fees when we haven't offered enough value, when we're caught talking A, to the wrong people, and B, we're not offering value to the right people. So the Challenger Sale puts it like this, that you've got to be having insight, and so do we at Rain Group, so that you insight with these people and offering something different. So you're differentiating yourself, and in this power equation, you're giving better value to the client. And that insight that both of us talk about is around what added value, what different things can you give them. In other words, solution selling, which has been the gold standard for selling for numerous years, is about asking the client what they need and fulfilling that with a solution that fulfills their needs. Whereas insight selling, and here comes the power in the bit, is offering value to a client about things they didn't know were important. So you've got so much expertise in their marketplace that you have greater power and greater value to the client. So therefore, in negotiation about fees, if you've got better value, you can afford to stand a little bit firmer on fees and give less away. That's what I'm really talking about here. And if anybody wants to contact me afterwards or talk to me afterwards, more than happy to talk longer of this. The important thing is you do this, and it comes straight out of that book that I just mentioned, Getting to Yes. Establish your backtrack. In other words, in the negotiation of fees that you're doing, make sure that you have an alternative to no agreement, best alternative to no agreement. So what would you do if you didn't work with this client? Now, if you've got an existing client who's very, very important and they're reducing lots of money, then you may think, well, actually, we may not agree on this assignment, we may agree on another assignment. Your best alternative to no agreement may be say, actually, on this particular element, we're not going to proceed with this, but on others we may do. That's if you've got different portfolios of income from the clients. Obviously, you may also think, well, actually, if we're not going to win this particular opportunity, another best alternative to no agreement is to work with other accounts and other clients to focus on them to get more margins, more profitable deals out of you. Because if you've got a backtrack and if you've got a strong position of other things you can do, in other words, your number of alternatives is greater, then you have a stronger bargaining position with them. And I say bargaining because that's normally what we think negotiation is about. So you've got to establish your background, you've got to establish what you're going to do if you don't agree terms with them. And amongst this, the absolutely essential of this is preparation and planning. So many occasions, you remember I said a little bit earlier that I said that we're caught on the hop, we're often surprised by this. If we expect it in the first place, in other words, the expression is, prepare for the worst, hope for the good. If we're prepared for a discussion about fees and we've already internally discussed what fees that we think we should negotiate to and what we should be expecting back from the customer as a result of this negotiation, puts in a much stronger position. We're much more confident going into any form of fee price negotiation. So here is don't agree immediately. That's the key thing. That's the rule first rule here. Don't give in immediately. Because often we charge, and I put dollar signs on this because I was, conscious that we may have some international, but we could easily put a pound sign on this as well. If you're given the question, what do you charge? Don't, as this person's doing here, say $400 or pounds per hour, but we can be flexible. I'd like to be charging £400 an hour. Because that indicates that it's not 400. Immediately, what you said is, oh, I'll do it for 380 or I'll do it for 350. If you say that, what you do is you wait for the other person to come back to say, is there any discount? Because often 400 is fine for them. The last person might have quoted them 800, and so their 400 might be absolutely fine. And And what you're doing is giving away something without any reference to what somebody has already thought is expensive or not. So rule 1 here, don't give in immediately. It's absolutely essential to that. Rule 2 around it. If you put in a request for proposal, you put in a proposal, don't justify with too much detail. And as it says here, if you put in a quote like this, what happens is, generally, in my experience, and some of you may have different experiences, so welcome to be influenced this, but this is based on the research that was done across 1,100 people to 1,800 people, sorry, is that if you put in much detail, people are given much more focus to investigate. Oh, can we do without that? Or can we do without, etc. When you know that the total thing is about getting the total value together, and the implementation of what you're trying to achieve will only be achieved if you implement it totally. So one of the suggestions from the research is don't justify too much detail. Obviously a little bit of detail if they want to come back. And let's face it, clients do come back to us and say, can you give me a little bit of detail on how you break down that? And if they do that, it's important to know where they're coming from around it. Whether it's a price per day problem or whether it's a total cost of the total unit or where the specific focus is. Now, rule 3 around this, and here we have, you justify how much, you decide where and when you want to reduce the fees, not when. That's the key thing about that one. But rule 3, moving on to rule 3, it's interesting actually, I moved on to rule 3 before I finished rule 2 here, as it were, and the research interestingly says that firms achieving premium prices and profit levels do not share their underlying fee structure nearly as often as other firms. That's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because they feel they don't have to, and they've got the right target in there. Anyway, finally on to rule 3. Now rule 3 is about this. Now, some of you know this is plan your minimum and maximum fee range in advance. Make sure that you decide internally your agreed fee ranges before any negotiation, and confidence around this is really key to it. So that when you're going into negotiation, you've already discussed what you're going to charge and what you're not going to charge around the deal. Because as I said earlier, often when you go into negotiation and talking about fees, whether it's a planned or unplanned situation, you put it on the back foot, and if you agree something, you're not absolutely sure you can agree something if it's not your business or you don't have the authority to do it. So it's really important that you plan a maximum and minimum agreed fee range between you internally beforehand. And you may have seen this as well, that you've got a maximum and range for a specific kind of work. And and you've planned in before what the necessary buyer's range is going to be. If we're the sellers in this, that zone of possible agreement, the ZOFA as it's sometimes called, in that middle is likely to be. Now, sometimes it's not easy, but you can probably do this from previous research of what they've asked for before, what the kind of negotiations before. Have they asked for 10% reduction? Are you willing to do that? And your previous experience with other clients as well. But the important thing from all of this is making sure you do this internally with people before you go into that negotiation. So you have a meeting internally within your team and say, okay, what's going to be our minimum, maximum range of fees that we're going to say? Also, here comes in rule 4, is if you do agree with any trading, if you do any fee, you trade them. You make it difficult to reduce the fee. We don't normally do this. I need to get approval internally to do this. But what were you thinking about it? But also, you don't give it away, but you trade them. So what you also do is make sure that when you are giving away something, that you trade them something else. So somebody might come to you and say, I want a 10% reduction on your fees or your contract or whatever you've shown them. You then can say, okay, let's look at that. If we can see a way of extending the contract, I may be able to look at other things. It's not within my It's not within my authority to do this. I'll have to talk to other people to talk about this if we're going to do this. What reasons can I give them to help them make a decision around this? Now, you don't always have to get the internal, approval before you can agree to something. You could have the authority yourself. But the important thing is trading the concessions. And some of you may be aware of this already, that's actually about making sure that you're not giving stuff away. So that when you lower your fees, it's a reason, you've got a reason to get back something from them, which is really important. So what concessions can you trade? Well, there may be things like this. There may be payment terms. They gave me 3 days of consultancy for a consultancy environment. You may put a value on everything. If you're going to give away free stuff, it may be a 500 euros or pounds or dollars a day rather than discounted, not free. You may want to extend client commitments. If we look at one of these in distance from that, and just look at these not in isolation, how long is the client willing to commit for? Are there guaranteed numbers of people are going through the program or the software? Is there going to be extended project scope? You may be able to do that as an extended project scope. Are we going to have reduced SLAs in the project? Are they happy to be a client reference? Are they happy for us to use their logo on our marketing material? Now, these are just some of the ideas around this. Obviously, at the end of the day, you've got to know what's helpful for you and what you're trying to achieve and your goals and your interests in the total, if you like, the total ecosphere in which you're working with yourself, to understand which one of these is most important to you. For me, logo power is pretty important. Also, payment terms are really important to me. If I'm asked to reduce fees, normally I look at payment terms as well. 50% upfront is normally what I ask for, and then I work backwards from there. And then 30 days and necessarily 60 days. And if it's a very, very large project, and there's an awful lot of money coming in, I might be looking at 90 days. But as a consultancy, 90 days is, most of you probably realise it's like death. So key things what do you want out of this day? Out of this trade? What are the key things that you want to negotiate on? So really important that. And as you can see, there is actually another rule involved as well. Oh yes, there's another rule. Don't travacate. Key terms around here, as I've just said, is I might be open to some flexibility if you are able to. And then look at all those things that you could be trading as well. Payment terms that I've just mentioned, 90 days, 60 days, 30 days on receipt or 50% up front. Those are some of them, as I've mentioned before. Getting 3 days consulting on discount a single day. Maybe want to put a value on anything. As I said before, 1,500 to 3,000 a day, discounted but not free. And then you may want to get extended commitment from them as well, and trade the variables around that, as I mentioned. Another thing that's important to me is guaranteed numbers. So if I'm going to give any discounts around things, I want to make sure there's a big enough slice of the entire project for me. So you've got to compare yourself with everybody else in terms of what your fees are and whether it's standard. But if you are going to ask for discounters, are they going to give you the guaranteed throughput you need in terms of whatever you're selling at terms in order to give them the numbers you need around what you want? And as we mentioned before, project scope is really important. Are there going to be different projects that are coming on? Are there going to be different areas you're going to work for? And from my own experience on this, sometimes they promise things. People promise things at this point. So, oh yes, of course there will be. There'll be lots of other things you can be doing within our organisation. Now, unless this is written into the contract, my own experience is that sometimes these don't come off. And they are just a tactic in order to get us actually into the environment, into the organisation, and us to actually lower fees. So beware of these sometimes as well, the amount of projects and the extended scope as well. Reduced SLAs, are we going to, they're going to require less from us in terms of service level agreements. And that's another area, of course, that we've been talking about, that we may, in this case, say, okay, we're not offered, did you want the 24-hour cover or did you want a 48-hour response time, things like that around the service level agreements. And it's important that we agree all of this, and I'm going back to my initial thing, before we start any negotiation. So we have got in the back of the mind in total points of variables. Now, just going back to this point, I've been doing some work fairly recently with the clients, and one of the clients said to me, he said, Tim, one of the things I find that we don't do is this: before we enter into a negotiation around fees, or if we've been asked to lower our fees, we don't have enough internal planning, and we talked about this before. He said, Tim, sometimes the simplest thing is just to sit together in a room with a whiteboard or a flip chart and go through all the things that could be asked of us by the clients, all the things they could throw at us around our fees, the comparison to others in the market, where we've not performed if it's an existing account. They may want to hit us with that. And prepare thoroughly for every eventuality. Prepare our ZOPA. Prepare where we think our maximum minimum fees are, where we're likely to agree, and what our best possible outcome could be for that particular engagement. We need to prepare for our BATNA. He said, Tim, all of these things, we know it's all common sense. We know we should be doing it. But often, we're in such haste to get to the client, such a haste to talk to the client. And also, let's face it, sometimes we haven't got time to do it. So he said to me, Tim, the majority is not, we don't know this, but actually, Tim, that we don't do it because we're so busy doing other things that this is a difficult thing to get us all together in one room and talk about this is extremely difficult. So this is all good common sense, he said to me, but actually the problem is not the fact we should be doing this, is actually whether we do it or not, or whether we simply just carry on business as usual in hope. And when we get into a negotiation like this, we simply go in there, prepare 1 minute before, don't have any dialogue between us before we talk about fees. So we're sitting there in the environment trying to make it up on the spot. That also always puts us on the back foot. He said to me, this, Tim, what I did in the organisation when I came to it, I listened to him because he was a fairly senior guy within the organisation I was dealing with, and a lot of experience within negotiation. He said, I make sure that every negotiation that comes up, and in fact every contract, and every deal, and every large opportunity we deal with, right before we come to the end, we start at the beginning. So by that I mean, when we're first introduced to the clients, the negotiation, selling, and the value starts there. He says, what I do is I make sure that right at the start, we're showing the client how we're different to others in the marketplace by providing insight on what their market is doing. And I know we talked about this before earlier today, but if I provide insight on where their market is at the moment and the direction others are taking, and the reason why it's important to take that direction, people are more engaged with us as an organisation. Now, he was very senior in that organisation. He made this rule. He said, Tim, I now insist that I personally come along to some of the deal reviews if we're looking at opportunities. And I get involved and say, right at the early stage, because often he says, they bring me in at the end, when they're just trying to negotiate the end of the sales process, where he says, I want them to bring me in the beginning to show how we can show value and differentiate ourselves. Because it makes negotiation around fees so much easier, he said. So much easier at the end if we're talking about, and he called it, and there's a phrase that's been used out there, we're talking to the right people, the C-level people, the people who make the decisions about outcomes are important to the business, rather than just either the technology or the service we're selling. As you can probably gather, he was in a technology environment. And the problem he was saying is around fees, that we're commoditized. And unless I do that early on in the process and go in early in the sales process and talk about insights and the value and how we can show we're different by the conversations we have, to the right people. So it says, Tim, it's not just having, great insight questions with people we normally deal with, but if we're in a larger organisation and we're not dealing with a senior level people where we can offer creative value around business outcomes, then we're more likely to be talking about fees at the end of the sales process because we're no different to anybody else. And he'd seen this presentation that I'd given. He said to me, going back to your power analogy, what we're trying to do, Tim, is create that value to us and make that figure above the value to the clients so much higher because they're talking to somebody who knows their business, knows their industry, and knows the direction they'll be taking. He said, Tim, there's a lot of evidence out there. He said, there's a lot of evidence that tells us that people want to talk us about their business, their outcomes. He said, in earlier days, I was making a mistake. I was making the mistake of trying to get my teams to sell technology, in his case. I know some people on the seminar are selling other things, so forgive me if I talk about technology because, it's one of the areas as well. But one of the things is we are now in an environment now that fees and price pressures are becoming more and more important. And it's really important that we see that one of the other tips I've got for you is don't look at the fee negotiation, look at the value you offer. Now, I've just had a question that come up and said, has the screen frozen? And said, no, it hasn't actually. I'm just talking in general about, reduced SLAs here. But I wanted to bring in this here just to talk about one of the experiences I had, and it actually goes to all of it. So apologies if you're still seeing the same slide here, but I just want to give you a little bit of that as well. As you can see, the slide's not they're frozen there. And the importance of, not only when we're talking about fees, the importance of actually, when we're in there, giving clients stories of where we've done stuff before. So what he said to me, his name was John, by the way. John said to me, the important thing here is that when you're talking to somebody about their industry, you can give them a lot more credibility and kudos if you've solved very similar problems about business outcomes in previous clients. And it's not the fact that you produce case studies, Tim. My guys used to provide case studies all the time. And written case studies, sometimes actually people don't bother reading unless they're really, really interested. He said, what I do with my guys early on in the sales process to stop the price pressure is get them to talk about implementations, areas in which we've worked with clients before, and some of the business outcomes we've achieved with other clients as well. Because what they're thinking about here is about return on investment. Now, it's a phrase that all of us have probably used for a number of years, but generally here they're thinking about return on investment for the investment in us. If we're at a higher price, is there much more value in what we're going to achieve in terms of in terms of business outcomes? But secondly, every time we go into a negotiation or a sale, there's risk involved. Let me take a step out of that and say, for instance, if you're just about to sign your mortgage paper and your mortgage payments, or your loan payments, depending on what kind of mortgage you've got, have gone up by 100%, so you were paying, say, X% and now you double that, there's a risk involved. And it's the same with anybody who's investing in any form of service or product or solution that we're selling to here. So it's important for us to know that we can provide people with case studies that de-risk situations. Because they're in a situation where they want to know, is this going to, A, achieve what they say they're going to, and that's by case study, and B, how much risk is it if I put X thousand or X million into this particular project? Am I, at the end of the day, going to be ended up in a situation having spent out this money without any return on investment? And we know senior people come in at the end of that to look at risk. And when those senior people come in, they've got, the better we can frame things around business outcomes, the better. So, going back to the slide that's here, reference and logo powers and case studies are so powerful Steps for when you're trading on fees, it's really important that you do this. But if you think you're going to have a really good case study, if you're working with a well-known organization, and you can use that and use the case study to help you keep your fees high with others, that means that your case study that you can use with their benefit can be used to either to get people or to get better prices with others and have so much value. So therefore, you're more likely to be able to reduce your fees or want to reduce your fees in that case. So coming back to this reference and logo power, it's really, really important that we look at that in terms of our case studies that are going forward and the insight that's derived from the case studies as well. So here are the 4.5 rules. I'm going to look at them again. Don't give in early. Don't justify with detail. And plan in advance a minimum and maximum fee structure. Make it difficult and trade, and the half-honest trade, don't give away fees. And this is one of the elements that I think is really, really important in terms of when we're talking about fees. Because going back to what we said originally, it's really, really easy for us to give away stuff when we shouldn't. And it's really easy for us to agree to something because we think either it's a large deal and, it's 10% of 2 million as opposed to 10% of 20,000. We think, well, 10%, that's absolutely fine because it's a large deal. But actually, there's also here the point of 1%. If we give away 1% of every deal in our organisation, and depending on your large organisation or small, if you're a large organisation, if you give away 1% of all your fees across the organisation, don't forget that 1% is multiplied by everybody in the organisation. So instead of being, giving away, 10,000, shall we say, on a large deal, as it were, if you multiply it by, if you've got 20 people within your organisation, but you've got 200, it then becomes such a much larger figure. And often we don't think about it. We don't think about, 1% here, 1% there. It's nothing. But actually that 1% comes directly off the bottom line. It comes off our profit margins because that can go straight into profit. Because the cost associated with that 1% is already been taken forward by the other amount of fees in there. So another tip I give here, in fact I'm giving more than 4.5 here, but I'm so passionate about this particular area, I think that we've got to make sure for success there we look and negotiating around fees, not just around full figures, around percentage points as well. Other thing here as well is that when we're making the first offer, say for instance, we're in negotiation about fees and it looks like it's going to come back, not just they're asking to reduce fees, but it looks like it's going to get there. If you go forward and put your fees into the element of the deal, and we're talking about negotiation here, it's more likely to be centered around that first figure you gave. What the research says, for instance, if you said we charge, $400 an hour, as I said on the previous slide, the final fee is much more going to be centered around that than it is going to be centered if they go first and say that we're prepared to $250. If they go first and say it's $250 an hour is really what we pay, then it's normally going to be centered around that $250, and you're immediately going to be thinking, oh my gosh, they're thinking $250, unless you have a very strong best alternative to their agreement. So some of the research says not only are these, but actually go first in that process. Going back on some of this as well, I think it's really important that we as an organisation, excuse the sounds of Outlook is going off my computer as well. There's obviously people coming in with emails for me. But the key thing about this as well is teamwork. I think very often what we do is we enter into negotiations on our own. We don't work in teams. We should be much more collaborative internally. And as John was saying to me, he makes this insistent that we work in tablets. We know what our maximum and minimum are. We don't give them too easily. And we do all this. But the fact that we're working as a team gives us much more confidence that we've got agreement from all senior people in the organisation. We're agreements the way we approach the market, but also agreements around the insight that we're going to give. This also comes around to the amount of upfront work we do. Now, if we're selling a product, service, or solution, very often we're in a commercial environment. But the more research we can do on our clients, the more research we can do on the insight we can give to our clients, then the less likely, as we said before, they are likely to negotiate with us on fees. So it's really important that we upfront make a decision as an organisation to go the route of finding more about our customers, not only on what the challenges they face today, but also the challenges they may face tomorrow and the way the industry trends are fine. You will increase your fees dramatically if you can become if you like, and I use this advisedly, a guru, a business partner then for their industry. The more knowledge you have about a particular client's industry or customer's industry, the more likely they are to talk to you, more likely to engage with you and listen to you. Particularly if you can tell them stuff they don't know. As soon as you say something to them, and I know we talked about this a little bit earlier, about giving insight, but as soon as you say to them something they weren't aware of that's happening in the industry which has a big impact on the future of their organisation, then they're more likely to be engaged. But as we said in the last time, this is all about the rapport and the credibility you develop in the first place. You haven't got to tell people what they should be doing. It's got to be part of the whole process of giving, advice and just setting the stage and building relationships with people, because people won't listen to you unless you are giving them the time, the effort and the engagement before you give them this insight or this shocking news. And the research that's been done on this says that as soon as somebody engages them in the right way and gives them insight which they're not aware of, then wow, does that change the nature of the relationship? Because you're called in at that stage to discuss stuff. You're not put to the bottom of the pile along with everybody else. And John was saying to us, he said, as a result of some of the process, and we've engaged a little bit, John and I, over the last few years on some things he's been doing, some of the challenges he had. He said the result of putting some of this elements of what we're talking about today, about making sure we don't give in too easily, making sure we've got a plan, making sure we're collaborating, making sure we've got all the fees right. He's been able to increase his EBITDA by 20%. He said that is incredible for us because we are on a small margin business, because we don't, normally operate on volume, not necessarily. But what we're tending to find by talking to others, or rather talking to our customers in the right way early on in the sales situation, sales process, I should say, then we're able to create this perception, is what he called it. He called it perception, that are actually helping the customer, advising the customer, not just pushing product. And that 20% EBITDA is pretty important for John, because he knows that he can put that into further research into industries, he can put that into customer support, he can put that into anywhere he chooses to do. And it's figures like that that give me, and certainly in the consultancy I do, the confidence of customers I work to say, it is possible, you can do this. So thing to do when clients press your fees, there is a little bit more than the 4.5 rules as well. It's about thinking your whole proposition to the marketplace. Are you merely in a competitive environment where you're, anybody's read the book called Blue Ocean Strategy, are you in the red ocean where everybody else is playing, where all the sharks are, creating a lot of noise in that marketplace and highly competitive? Or are you starting to play a different role in your environment? Are you starting to play, a key other role in that environment, changing the way you're viewed, changing the perception in there as well? Now, I've had another question. I know, Adam, we're probably coming on to question time in a second or two as well. But I'm going to ask this, if that's okay. I'll answer this while I'm on the fly. When you don't work in teams, how would you recommend having your negotiation preparation checked? That's a really great negotiation sanity. Thank you for whoever sent that question. I know these questions are anonymous, but it's really great to have questions like that. That is absolutely right, because a lot of us work on our own, don't we? I'm lucky I work in a team. There's a team of us that work together, and we often do this. Now, sometimes when you're working your own, one of the good things is you need somebody to talk to. And if anybody is working on their own and wants some free time with me just to, check the sanity, I'm more than happy to give up some of my time, half an hour here, half an hour there. It's not a problem whatsoever. Just to be that sort of sounding board for, looking at your environment negotiation, whether it's highly competitive, whether you're a premium price product and you're trying to defend your margins or things or anything like that. It is difficult, I know, when you're working on your own. And sometimes you can't go to somebody else, and sometimes you can't go to a competitor. And it is a lonely place, isn't it? Let's face it, working on your own out there, and I did this for many, many years before I built up a team around me. I worked on my own, and I say lonely, but it can feel lonely. You feel like you're a business on your own. But as an offer I'd give to you, that person who made that, and anybody else who's listening to this, please do get in contact at the end of this. Get in contact with Adam, and he can give you my details. Or, and I'm more than happy to give up some time on Skype or something, look at your specific details and see where I can help you. Now, we're coming to question time, I think. So I'm going to hand back to Adam to see whether we've got any questions around this area. And so I clicked on the slide, and this is your cue, Adam, to come back into it.
Yes, so thanks, Tim, for that. Tim is really quite fluent now in this platform, and it's completely shown. I'd obviously like to extend my thanks personally to him for taking his time to deliver this. There will be the opportunity for questions. If anyone has any questions, please type them into the box above. But as you can see, this is the team at the ISM. It will be expanding soon, but this is the team as it stands. If there's any questions that anyone has, any questions at all, you can find it on our website, which is www.ismprofessional.com. And please feel free to get in touch with us. In terms of a brief glimpse about who we are and who we work with, this is the sort of companies and organizations we do. A variety of training providers as well as corporates across the UK. So if you feel like you could get in touch with us to help you with your qualifications or certification, please get in touch with us. And all information, of course, is on our website. The next webinar will be delivered on the 6th of February, next Tuesday. Is it next Tuesday or the week after next? I can't recall.
Yeah.
I'm getting old, Tim. On the 6th of February, delivered by another mentor, not only an ISM online mentor, but also a fellow as well, Adam Johnson, on making a difference. But if there aren't any other questions, I'd like to obviously say thank you very much, Tim, for your time in preparing these materials for us. Tim is obviously back again in a couple of weeks' time to deliver his third and final webinar with us. And who knows, I might actually invite him back again. So, Tim, thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks so much, Adam, and good luck, everybody. Please do get in contact if you need help.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, and goodbye.